Beneath the waves lies a hidden chapter of human history. For generations, we have traced civilization's origins to a few ancient river valleys. But what if the true cradle was a coastline now lost to the ocean? Plato wrote of a magnificent empire that sank beneath the sea in a single day, a story long dismissed as myth. Yet across the globe, from the coasts of Japan to the shallows of the Bahamas, stone structures and forgotten settlements rest on the ocean floor, silent witnesses to a forgotten age. This video will take you on a journey to 30 of these underwater ruins, sites that suggest advanced human societies thrived during the last ice age, only to be erased by cataclysmic floods. By the end, you will see a radically different map of our prehistoric past, one where the oceans are not barriers but vast, flooded museums. What secrets do these sunken stones hold about our ancestors' resilience in the face of a changing world? The story of these lost cities begins not with a sudden cataclysm, but with a slow, planetary transformation. To understand how entire landscapes could vanish beneath the waves, we must journey back to the peak of the last ice age. Around 20,000 years ago, our world looked profoundly different. Vast ice sheets, some over 2 miles thick, blanketed much of North America and Northern Europe. So much of the planet's water was locked away in these frozen reservoirs that global sea levels were a staggering 120 meters lower than they are today. This exposed immense stretches of land we now call continental shelves, creating coastal plains, lush river valleys, and entire land bridges that have since disappeared. One of the largest was Sunderland, a sunken continent that connected the islands of Southeast Asia into a continuous landmass, linking places like Borneo, Java, and Sumatra to the Asian mainland. Another was Beringia, the grassy plain that served as a bridge between Siberia and Alaska. These were not barren wastelands, but potentially fertile and habitable territories, now lost to the deep. This process of sea level change is known as eustatic shift, a global alteration of ocean volume. When the climate began to warm, the great ice sheets started to retreat. The meltwater returned to the world's oceans, causing them to rise steadily and at times dramatically. As renowned oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard has emphasized, this was not a local flood event, but a planet-wide phenomenon that reshaped every coastline on Earth. The rise was not a smooth, gentle slope. Research reveals periods of terrifyingly rapid increase called meltwater pulses. One of the most significant occurred between 14,000 and 11,000 years ago, where sea levels may have risen by several meters per century, swallowing vast tracts of land within just a few human generations. Imagine watching the shoreline creep closer year after year, your ancestral fishing grounds, then your village, and finally the sacred hill where your people held ceremonies, all slowly consumed by the relentless sea. This foundational knowledge is crucial. It transforms the idea of a sunken city from a mysterious legend into a geological inevitability. The ruins we are about to explore are not random anomalies. They are the logical, submerged footprints of a human story written on a now drowned shore. This brings us to a fundamental question. What exactly are we looking for when we speak of an Ice Age civilization? We must set aside our traditional image of sprawling stone cities and vast empires. The model that places the first civilization solely in the river valleys of Mesopotamia and Egypt around 5,000 years ago may only tell the final chapter of a much longer story. For a society thriving 20,000 years ago during the grip of an ice age, advancement would look different. We should envision resilient coastal communities with a deep understanding of the sea, capable of constructing substantial stone monuments, and perhaps practicing early forms of cultivation in a challenging environment. Their legacy would not be written on clay tablets. but carved into the very bedrock of coastlines that are now underwater. The search shifts from hunting for a mythical sunken metropolis to a more subtle yet profound investigation. We are looking for anthropogenic modifications, clear signs of human alteration on landscapes that were once dry. This could be a stone circle aligned with the solstice sun, now resting 40 meters below the surface. It could be a meticulously carved quarry for building materials, or the remnants of a massive fish weir constructed to feed a community. Evidence of organized labor, shared cultural knowledge, and trade networks that spanned now drowned plains would all be markers of a complex society. These are the fingerprints we hope to find on a lost world. This reframing is essential, especially when we consider one of the most controversial theories in alternative history, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Proposed by researchers like Graham Hancock, it suggests that around 12,800 years ago, a fragmented comet struck the Earth's atmosphere. This event, they argue, triggered a sudden return to Ice Age conditions and caused catastrophic global flooding, effectively resetting human progress and erasing these early coastal societies from memory. While hotly debated within mainstream archaeology, the hypothesis underscores a crucial point. It presents a possible mechanism for why evidence of such cultures is so scarce and fragmented, forcing us to look not just on land, but beneath the waves for clues of a forgotten chapter in the human story. Our journey to these 30 sites, therefore, is a search for these subtle fingerprints, a quest to see if the stones beneath the sea can tell a story that the stones on land have kept silent. Our journey into the depths begins with a single, breathtaking structure off the coast of Japan. In the clear waters near Yonaguni Island, the last speck of Japanese territory before Taiwan, divers encounter something that defies easy explanation. Rising from the seafloor is a colossal formation of sandstone, a series of immense flat terraces stacked like a giant staircase. Its edges are sharp and precise, forming near-perfect 90-degree angles. There are what look like wide, ceremonial steps, deep trenches that run in straight lines, and even a striking pillar that resembles a carved face staring out into the blue abyss. The first sight of the Yonaguni monument is an experience that lingers, a silent question carved in stone. Is this a masterpiece of natural geology? Or are we looking at the ruins of a sacred site constructed when this spot was dry land? This question has divided experts for decades and perfectly captures the thrilling uncertainty of underwater archaeology. On one side is marine geologist Masaaki Kimura, who has spent years studying the site. He points to features that seem to defy nature, like twin megaliths that appear to fit together with purpose, symmetrical star-shaped designs, and what he interprets as clear tool marks on the rock. He envisions a complex with a castle, a triumphal arch, and even a stadium, all constructed by a sophisticated culture. Opposing this view are scientists like geologist Robert Schoch, who argues that the sandstone in this region naturally fractures along horizontal and vertical planes, especially when subjected to strong undersea currents. He sees the monument as a beautiful but entirely natural example of this process, with any resemblance to architecture being a trick of the human mind seeking patterns. The debate hinges on one critical factor: time. If the structure is artificial, when could it have been built? Geological surveys indicate this area was last above sea level at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, a date that would place its construction far earlier than any known complex monument in Japan. This single site, wrapped in the cool silence of the Pacific, forces us to confront the core dilemma of this search. Are we seeing what we wish to see? Or are we witnessing the first, crumbling page of a history book we have only just begun to open? The silence of Yonaguni leaves us with a profound question, but the waters off India offer something more, a story that has never been forgotten, Shifting to the west to the Gulf of Combat, we encounter a site where ancient myth and modern sonar readings collide. This is the legendary city of Dwarka, described in sacred Hindu texts as the magnificent, fortified capital of the divine hero Lord Krishna. The scriptures tell of a city so splendid it was said to be built by the celestial architect Vishwakarma, a place of great learning and prosperity. Yet the tales hold a tragic conclusion. They recount that upon Krishna's departure from the world, the entire city was consumed by the sea, vanishing beneath the waves in a single, catastrophic event. For thousands of years, this was considered a powerful spiritual allegory, a story about the impermanence of material glory. But what if it was also a memory? In the late 1980s and early 2000s, marine archaeologists from India's National Institute of Oceanography began a systematic survey of the Gulf. Using side-scan sonar, they mapped the seabed and made a startling discovery. They identified large, geometric structures spread across a vast area, formations that appeared to be the foundations of walls, pillars, and what could be the layout of a sprawling settlement. Subsequent dredging brought up physical evidence, including stone artifacts, beads, and sections of pottery. The most controversial find, however, was samples of what appeared to be worked wood. When these were subjected to carbon dating, the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The dates suggested the material could be up to 9,500 years old, a time frame that would place a sophisticated settlement here millennia before the accepted dawn of the Indus Valley civilization. This discovery uniquely bridges the world of scripture and the world of science. It challenges us to reconsider the nature of ancient oral traditions. Could the vivid story of Dwarka's sinking be a cultural memory, passed down through countless generations, of a real coastal city that was lost to the rising seas at the end of the last ice age? The scientific dates, while debated, align hauntingly well with the period of rapid sea level rise known as Meltwater Pulse 1b. Instead of dismissing the legend as pure myth, Dwarka invites us to see it as a potential historical record, encoded in epic poetry. It suggests that our ancestors did not simply forget the lands they lost. They wove their loss into the very fabric of their identity, preserving a warning and a memory in story long before the first clay tablet was ever inscribed. This site does more than present ruins. It offers a key, a way to listen to the past not just with tools, but with respect for the stories it left behind. The waters of the Bahamas hold a different kind of mystery, one of stark geometry under a tropical sun. Just off the coast of North Bimini, in water so clear it feels like flying, lies a formation that has sparked imaginations for over half a century. Known as the Bimini Road, it appears as a long undersea pathway composed of massive, rectangular limestone blocks. These stones, some over 15 feet across, are arranged in a deliberate-looking J shape, running for nearly half a mile along the sandy seafloor. To the eye, it looks uncannily like a ruined causeway or the foundation of a great wall, a paved road leading enticingly toward the deep blue nothingness. Its discovery in 1968 was electrifying, coming just as predictions by the famed psychic Edgar Cayce had suggested remnants of Atlantis would rise near Bimini in that very decade. For many, the connection was immediate and profound. This was physical proof of the lost continent, a fragment of its legendary harbor waiting to be decoded. The sheer visual power of the formation made it an instant icon for alternative history, a symbol of a forgotten world waiting just beneath our feet. Yet science offered a more mundane but equally fascinating explanation. Geologists point to a common natural process in the region. They identify the stone as beach-rock, a type of sandstone that forms when coastal sand and shell fragments cement together with calcium carbonate, essentially creating a natural pavement along a shoreline. Over time, this layer can fracture along horizontal and vertical lines as it subsides, creating blocks that appear eerily man-made. The entire formation, they argue, could be the result of this natural cementation and subsequent cracking, a quirk of geology rather than a feat of ancient engineering. So is the case closed? Not entirely. Researchers who support an artificial origin point to details that complicate the simple Beacroc theory. They note that some blocks appear to be stacked in 2 layers, and that the stone composition varies from block to block, suggesting they might have been quarried from different locations and brought to the site. The consistent size and the persistent, curved alignment also seem to defy purely random natural fracturing. The Bimini Road stands as a perfect lesson in how we interpret the past. It shows how easily our desire to find can shape what we see, and how a single, ambiguous structure can become a canvas for our deepest historical longings. It challenges us to look past the initial wonder and ask the harder questions, to weigh the romantic possibility against the steady explanations of nature, knowing that sometimes the truth lies not in choosing one answer, but in understanding the powerful dialogue between the two. But the sea holds its deepest secrets under the greatest pressure. Far from the sunlit shallows of Bimini, in the profound darkness over 600 meters down off the western coast of Cuba, a discovery was made that challenges every assumption about the timeline of human achievement. In the year 2001, a marine survey team led by engineer Paulina Zalitsky was scanning the seafloor near the Guanahacoibes Peninsula. Their advanced side scan sonar did not return images of random geology. Instead, it painted a picture of stunning, almost impossible order. On the monitor, emerging from the abyssal plain, were clear, symmetrical shapes. There were what appeared to be massive, smooth-sided pyramids, some larger than those at Giza. There were long, linear formations intersecting at right angles, resembling a grid of wide avenues or colossal walls. Scattered among them were perfect circles and seemingly rectangular structures, all arranged with a geometric precision that screamed of intelligent design. The scale was staggering, suggesting the layout of a vast, submerged urban complex resting under nearly half a mile of ocean water. Zalitsky and her team were immediately and deeply cautious. They understood the extraordinary claim their data implied. They did not declare they had found Atlantis, but they stated unequivocally that the formations were highly anomalous and warranted serious scientific investigation. The implications of that simple statement are earth-shattering. For these structures to be artificial, they had to have been built on dry land. Geologists know that for this part of the Caribbean seafloor to have been above water, global sea levels would need to have been lower by an immense margin. This does not point to the end of the last ice age 10,000 years ago, but to a period much deeper in antiquity, perhaps as far back as 50,000 years or more. That time frame exists in a shadowy realm of human prehistory where conventional archaeology suggests our ancestors were simple hunter-gatherers, incapable of such monumental, coordinated labor. The Cuban megaliths, if validated, would not just rewrite history, they would tear up the entire book and start a new one. They whisper of a forgotten epoch, a potential cycle of human civilization that rose, built on a colossal scale, and then was utterly erased by the creeping ocean, leaving only these ghostly echoes on a sonar screen for a distant future to puzzle over. This is a mystery that lies in the crushing deep, a silent, dark challenge to our understanding of who we are and how long we have been striving to leave our mark upon the world. From the crushing pressure of the Caribbean abyss, we surface to the cold, brackish waters of the north. The Baltic Sea holds its own enigma, one that began not with a scholarly survey but with a treasure hunt. In the summer of 2011, a Swedish team named Ocean X was scanning the seafloor between Sweden and Finland, searching for sunken shipwrecks. What their sonar revealed was no ordinary wreck. On the monitor, resting on the seabed nearly 90 meters down, was a perfectly circular object roughly 60 meters across. Its surface was not smooth. It appeared to have distinct geometric features resembling a staircase or a series of corridors. Leading away from it was a long, straight track, as if the object had skidded or been dragged across the muddy bottom before coming to rest. The image was stark, unnatural, and instantly captivating. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, it looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. A flying saucer straight from the cover of a science fiction novel, preserved in the icy dark. Public imagination ignited with breathtaking speed. Theories erupted, each more fantastic than the last. Was this a crashed extraterrestrial craft, a relic from a time before history? Others suggested a secret Nazi anti-submarine device from World War II, or even a lost piece of ancient, advanced technology from a civilization like Atlantis. The anomaly's strange, almost architectural appearance fed these stories, and reports from subsequent dives added more layers of mystery. Divers claimed their electrical equipment would malfunction when directly over the object. Samples retrieved were said to contain metals not typically found in the region. For a moment, it seemed the ultimate proof of a forgotten world, or another world entirely, had been found. Yet, as with all profound mysteries, rigorous science began to peel back the layers of speculation. Geologists and marine experts offered a far more terrestrial, though no less fascinating, explanation. The Baltic Sea region was heavily sculpted by glaciers during the last ice age. As these colossal ice sheets advanced and retreated, they could deposit enormous boulders and carve the bedrock in strange ways. The leading hypothesis is that the anomaly is a unique glacial deposit, a particularly large and oddly shaped glacial erratic that was later modified by natural post-glacial processes. The staircase features could be the result of differential erosion, where softer rock layers wore away faster than harder ones. The mysterious track might simply be a scour mark left by the iceberg that carried this massive stone as it grounded on the seafloor millennia ago. Most of the more extraordinary claims, like the electrical interference, have been attributed to the challenging conditions of deep-sea exploration itself. While the Baltic Sea Anomaly is almost certainly a remarkable work of nature, its legacy is profoundly human. The intense global fascination it sparked is a powerful case study in our relationship with the unknown. It highlights a deep, almost innate desire to find evidence that our history is grander, stranger, and more mysterious than the textbooks tell us. We look at an ambiguous shape in the dark and our minds, shaped by myth and longing, rush to fill the void with stories of lost cities and visitors from the stars. This tendency to see patterns, to connect dots into a narrative of forgotten greatness, is a theme that echoes through every site on this list. The anomaly teaches us a crucial dual lesson: the necessity of patient, evidence-based analysis to ground our discoveries, and the undeniable power of mystery to pull us toward the depths, reminding us that the greatest treasure we often find is not a sunken ship, but a rekindled sense of wonder about our own planet's hidden past. While the Baltic Anomaly reminds us of nature's capacity to deceive, history provides a stark counterpoint, a story where legend was proven to be devastating fact. The ancient Greek city of Helike offers no such ambiguity. In the winter of 373 BC, this prosperous coastal city, a major center of worship for the sea god Poseidon, vanished in a single, terrifying night. Ancient writers like Pausanias left haunting accounts. They described how, just before the disaster, giant columns of flame were seen in the sky, and all the small animals, the mice and snakes, fled the city in a mass exodus. Then a colossal earthquake struck, shaking the very foundations of Helike. As the ground convulsed, a gigantic tsunami surged inland from the Corinthian Gulf, engulfing the entire city. When the waters finally receded, Helike was gone, swallowed by the sea. The The destruction was so complete that for centuries afterward, sailors reported they could see the bronze statue of Poseidon himself, his hand outstretched, eerily visible beneath the waves, a ghostly sentinel marking the city's grave. For nearly 2,000 years, Helike existed only in these classical texts, a powerful moral tale about the wrath of the gods. It was a story of sudden, catastrophic loss that echoed the older, grander myth of Atlantis, making scholars wonder if Plato's tale was inspired by such real events. The search for the physical Helike became an archaeological obsession, a quest to turn a well-documented tragedy into a tangible ruin. That quest finally succeeded in the 1990s, but not where anyone expected. Teams led by archaeologists Dora Katsonopoulou and Stephen Soter did not find a city resting on the seafloor. Instead, using core samples and ground-penetrating radar on the coastal plain, they discovered that Helike's ruins were buried deep beneath layers of silt and gravel, inland from the modern shoreline. The cataclysm had not simply drowned the city, it had liquefied the ground during the earthquake, causing the entire urban area to sink and be rapidly buried by river sediments carried in by the tsunami. The ruins were preserved in a waterlogged tomb, a time capsule of a classical city's final moments. This discovery is a master key for our entire search. Helike is a verified, historically documented example of a city claimed by the sea. It shows us the precise mechanics of such a disaster, earthquake, subsidence, and tsunami, and how quickly the evidence can be hidden from view, not under clear ocean water, but beneath layers of earth. It proves that ancient accounts of sunken cities can be literal truth, not allegory. Most importantly, Helike provides a crucial bridge. It connects the legendary, like Atlantis or Dwarka, to the archaeologically tangible. It demonstrates that the process of a civilization being lost to the waters is not a myth, but a geological and historical reality. While Helike itself is not an ice age ruin, its story and its rediscovery inform our search for far older sites. It teaches us where to look, not just on the open seabed, but in buried coastal plains. It tells us to listen to the stories, for they may hold not just poetry, but precise clues to a past where the border between land and sea was a far more fragile and far more dangerous place to build a world. The clear waters of southern Laconia hold a city frozen in time. Pavlopetri, resting just beneath the surface off the coast of Greece, is not a mystery shrouded in debate, but a fact. It is the oldest known submerged city in the world, a perfectly preserved Bronze Age settlement dating back approximately 5,000 years. Unlike the ambiguous shapes of sonar readings, Pavlopetri is breathtakingly tangible. From the surface on a calm day, you can peer down and see the ghostly outline of a complete community. There are the straight lines of stone-paved streets, still organizing the space after millennia. The foundations of buildings, from modest homes to larger structures that may have been palaces or administrative centers, define courtyards and rooms. Archaeologists have even mapped out tombs and what appear to be religious sites, creating a comprehensive plan of an entire ancient town. This is not a random collection of ruins, it is the clear blueprint of a planned settlement, a complex urban layout that speaks of social organization, trade, and daily life in a way that scattered artifacts alone never could. Its significance is profound. It offers an unparalleled, almost cinematic snapshot of early urban existence, a complete chapter rather than a scattered sentence. The story of its disappearance is also instructive. Pavlopetri was not erased in a single, violent cataclysm like Helike. Instead, its submergence was a slower, more relentless process. A combination of seismic activity which caused the land to gradually sink and the steady rise of sea levels following the Ice Age slowly flooded the city over centuries. This was a creeping inevitability, perhaps giving generations of its inhabitants time to adapt, to move their port activities further inland, until finally the waves claimed the last street and the last courtyard. This very clarity makes Pavlopetri a crucial Rosetta Stone for our entire search. It provides an archaeological benchmark. Here we have a confirmed, meticulously studied sunken city. We know its age, we understand its layout, and we see the causes of its drowning. When we then look at far older and more controversial sites, like the structures off Cuba or the formations at Yonaguni, we have a tangible standard for comparison. We can ask more informed questions. Do the underwater features show evidence of similar urban planning? Do they align with geological processes we understand, or do they stand apart? Pavlopetri grounds our imagination in documented reality, giving us a firm foundation from which to cautiously explore the deeper, darker waters of prehistory. The story of lost cities is not confined to the ocean's depths. We must now journey higher than any site we have yet explored, to a place where the sky is thin and the water holds the memory of a different kind of flood. Lake Titicaca, straddling the border of Bolivia and Peru, rests over 12,000 feet above sea level, a vast inland sea cradled by the snow-capped peaks of the Andes. For the local Aymara and Quechua peoples, these are sacred waters, the birthplace of the sun and the moon according to Inca legend. Their oral traditions speak of a magnificent city called Huanacu, or sometimes the Temple of the Fox, that once stood on the shores before being swallowed by the lake in a time of great upheaval. For generations, these stories were considered beautiful mythology, poetic explanations for the origins of their world. Then, divers began to bring back reports that would blur the line between folklore and history. In the late 1960s and early 70s, explorers and archaeologists, including the Bolivian researcher Hugo Bauero Rojo, began systematic investigations of the lakebed. What they found was startling. Near the famed Island of the Sun, a site of immense spiritual significance, they documented what appeared to be extensive man-made structures. There were long, straight walls built from massive stones, some fitted together with the precise, angular technique reminiscent of the nearby ruins of Tiwanaku. They mapped out what looked like a large, terraced temple complex, and most provocatively, a colossal stepped formation that many believe could be a submerged pyramid or ceremonial platform. These structures lie in depths ranging from 100 to over 200 feet, silent and draped in sediment. This discovery fundamentally shifts the geography of our search. Until now, every site has been coastal, a victim of rising global sea levels. Lake Titicaca is an enclosed basin, its waters fed by mountain rivers and glacial melt. A sunken city here points to a different kind of cataclysm, one of dramatic local climate change or geological activity. The lake's own level has fluctuated wildly over millennia, and evidence suggests it was once far lower, exposing vast tracts of land where communities could have thrived. A massive seismic event, common in this tectonically active region, could have caused a sudden subsidence of the shoreline, or triggered a colossal landslide that sent a wall of water across ancient settlements. This connects directly to the enduring mystery of the Tiwanaku culture itself. The monumental stone ruins on the lake's southern shore, with their iconic Gate of the Sun, represent one of the most advanced pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas. Yet their own origin stories are filled with references to a great flood that wiped away a previous age of giants. Some scholars interpreting Tiwanaku's complex calendar and architecture suggest its foundational era could extend back over 10,000 years, a timeline that would place its beginnings in the chaotic post-Ice Age climate. The underwater structures in Lake Titicaca could be the physical precursor to Tiwanaku, the lost Huanaku of legend that its builders remembered in their myths. This high-altitude mystery expands our map in a crucial way. It tells us that the search for drowned history is not just about oceans reclaiming continental shelves. It is about the profound instability of our entire planet after the glaciers retreated. Great lakes rose and fell, earthquakes reshaped basins, and mountain cultures preserved the memory of lands that vanished beneath not salt water, but the fresh, cold waters of the high Andes. It suggests that the fingerprints of forgotten civilizations might be waiting anywhere that water and earth have dramatically changed their ancient pact. The power of myth to become reality was never more dramatically proven than on the morning of December 26, 2004. As the Indian Ocean tsunami gathered its terrible force, it first performed a strange and eerie act along the coast of Tamil Nadu. The sea withdrew, pulling back hundreds of meters from the shore near the ancient port town of Mahabalipuram. For a few haunting minutes, the seabed lay exposed, and local fishermen stared in disbelief. Where there had only been sand and water, stone structures now emerged into the harsh sunlight. They saw the carved head of a massive lion, the weathered blocks of what looked like a fortified wall, and the outlines of other buildings, all briefly liberated from their watery tomb before the ocean returned with devastating fury. In that fleeting moment, a 1,000-year-old legend was vindicated. For generations, the people of this coast had spoken of the 7 pagodas of Mahabalipuram. They said 6 magnificent temples, rivals to the one magnificent shore temple that still stands, had been so splendid that the gods grew jealous and sent a great flood to drown them, leaving only one as a reminder. The receding tsunami waves had acted as a colossal, accidental archaeologist, pulling back the curtain on a truth preserved in oral tradition. In the aftermath of the tragedy, formal archaeological surveys were launched. Teams from the Indian National Institute of Oceanography and the Archaeological Survey of India used sonar and diving expeditions to systematically map the area. They confirmed the existence of extensive submerged ruins spread over several square kilometers. They documented not just scattered blocks, but the remains of a large, complex structure resembling a temple, along with fallen walls, steps, and plinths. The style of the carvings and construction techniques clearly linked many of these ruins to the glorious Pallava dynasty, which ruled the region between the 6th and 9th centuries and built the famous shore temple. This was a monumental discovery, proving a major Pallava port city had indeed been partially claimed by the sea, likely through a combination of coastal erosion and seismic subsidence over centuries. Yet, as with so many of these sites, a deeper question lingers beneath the confirmed history. The scale of the submerged complex is vast, and archaeologists note that some of the foundational stonework appears different, potentially older than the Pallava period. Could the Pallavas, renowned for their architectural genius, have built their port upon the remains of a much older, perhaps even Ice Age, settlement that had already been reclaimed by the shore? The legend does not specify when the 6 pagodas were drowned, it simply states they were. Mahabalipuram stands as a powerful lesson in layers. It shows us how a natural disaster can, in an instant, confirm the wisdom of folklore, revealing a historical truth from a known dynasty. But it also whispers of the possibility that our known history is often just the most recent chapter, constructed literally upon the drowned foundations of a world we have only just begun to remember. The seafloor near Atlit, Israel, holds a different kind of treasure, not of legend, but of intimate, heartbreakingly real life. Here, resting just a few hundred meters offshore beneath 10 meters of Mediterranean water, lies a village frozen in time. Known as Atlit Yam, this is not a city of kings but a community of farmers and fishers, a pre-pottery Neolithic settlement that thrived over 8,000 years ago. Its discovery shattered assumptions, providing a perfect, preserved snapshot of a coastal society living on the edge of a changing world. The level of preservation is nothing short of miraculous. Archaeologists have mapped the clear foundations of rectangular stone houses, defining the very spaces where families lived. They found deep, stone-lined wells that once tapped into the freshwater beneath the salty soil, a brilliant adaptation to their shoreline environment. Most striking of all is a semicircle of massive stones, a ritual monument with a central hearth, echoing the mysterious stone circles of a much later age in distant lands. This was a place of domestic routine, of spiritual ceremony, and of profound connection to the sea and land. The site also offers a deeply human and poignant connection to these ancient people. Within the village, researchers discovered the resting places of individuals, their remains providing a silent archive of their lives. Analysis revealed something extraordinary: the earliest known evidence of tuberculosis in human history. This finding, while speaking to the health challenges of a close-knit community, transforms these individuals from abstract concepts into real people who lived, cared for one another, and faced illness together. It adds a layer of profound humanity to the stones and wells, reminding us that this was a place of laughter, struggle, and loss long before the waves came. The story of Atlit Yam's end is a quiet echo of the planetary changes we have already explored. This village was not destroyed in a sudden cataclysm. Instead, it was gradually, inexorably, abandoned as the post-Ice Age sea levels continued their relentless rise. The creeping saltwater likely began to infiltrate their precious freshwater wells and flood their fields, making life unsustainable over generations. The people, facing this slow-motion emergency, ultimately gathered their belongings and moved inland, leaving their homes to the sea. This gradual retreat is what makes Atlit Yam such an invaluable time capsule. Because it was submerged gently, not shattered by catastrophe, its artifacts and structures remained largely intact, buried in sediment that protected them for millennia. This site is the concrete, scientifically validated evidence that underpins the entire premise of our journey. It proves, beyond any doubt, that sophisticated, settled communities with agriculture, architecture, and complex social structures were established on coastal plains now under the sea, thousands of years before the rise of Sumer or the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Atlit Yam is the missing piece of the puzzle, a tangible village that turns the grand theory of drowned Ice Age civilizations from a speculative mystery into a documented historical fact. It shows us that the Great Flood stories are not merely about the loss of mythical empires, but also about the quiet drowning of countless humble homes, each one a world to those who lived there. The quiet abandonment of Atlit Yam gives us a profound truth, but some ruins speak with a different voice, one that rises and falls with the rhythm of the tides. Off the coast of Brittany, in the mystical Gulf of Morbihan, lies a site that performs a slow, daily magic. It is the stone circle of Lannic, and it exists in two worlds. At low tide, a ring of towering granite menhirs stands revealed on a small island, silent and imposing against the sky. But as the water returns, it does not simply surround these stones. It swallows a second, concentric ring that lies just offshore, a ghostly twin permanently submerged. Twice each day, the sea retreats to show one half of the monument, and then advances to conceal the other, as if the ancient site itself is breathing with the pulse of the ocean. This rhythmic revelation is more than just a beautiful spectacle. It is a direct and unambiguous message from the Neolithic builders who raised these stones over 6,000 years ago. Archaeologists are in clear agreement. Lannic is a single, intentional ceremonial complex. The fact that one of its rings now lies permanently underwater is not a mystery of design, but a stark indicator of geography. When these massive stones were erected, the entire area was dry land. The sea level in this basin was meters lower, allowing the builders to construct their double circle on solid ground, likely for rituals connected to the cycles of the sun, moon, and the fertile landscape around them. The slow, post-Ice Age rise of the oceans gradually invaded this sacred space, flooding the outer ring forever and turning the island of the inner circle into a tidal feature. Lannic provides a smaller scale but irrefutable piece of the global puzzle. It is not a lost city but a drowned temple, It shows us with crystal clarity that the megalithic engineers of the European Stone Age were not building on the coastline we see today. They were operating on a different map, one that extended further out into what are now sheltered bays and tidal flats. This site directly links human spiritual ambition to a past geography, proving that our ancestors' most enduring monuments are often anchors to a vanished shoreline. It reminds us that sea level change did not just swallow hypothetical metropolises, it quietly reshaped localized sacred landscapes, turning places of gathering into places of isolation, and leaving behind stone sentinels that now mark the boundary between our world and the one that was lost beneath the gentle, rising waves. The rhythmic tides of Brittany give way to the warm, tropical waters of the Pacific, where another type of submerged story is written not in grand temples, but in countless humble stones. Along the Pacific coast of Panama, in the Gulf of Chiriquí, local fishermen navigating the shallow bays have passed down knowledge for generations. They spoke of areas where the clear water revealed strange, conical mounds of rock littering the sandy bottom, formations that felt out of place in the natural seascape. For a long time, these were simply navigational hazards or curiosities, the kind of local lore that seldom reaches the pages of academic journals. That changed when archaeologists finally turned their attention beneath the waves. What they discovered was staggering. Scattered across the seafloor were not just a few random piles, but hundreds of carefully constructed stone cairns. These were not haphazard heaps. They were arranged with clear intention, forming long, straight lines and deliberate geometric patterns that stretched across the submerged landscape. Each cairn was built from rounded river stones, painstakingly gathered and stacked by human hands in waters that are now just a few meters deep. The sheer number of them and the clear organization of their layout pointed to something far more significant than a casual project. This was a large-scale, coordinated effort that would have required the labor and planning of an entire community working together over a considerable period. So what was the purpose of this vast, underwater stone garden? Researchers have proposed several compelling theories, each offering a glimpse into the practical and cultural life of a pre-Columbian people whose coastline has since slipped away. One strong possibility is that these were sophisticated fish traps. Arranged in strategic lines and shapes, the cairns could have worked with the natural tides to corral fish into confined areas, making them easy to harvest with nets or spears. This would represent an ingenious adaptation, a form of mariculture that provided a reliable food source. Another theory suggests they could have served as territorial markers or navigational aids for canoes traveling between islands and the mainland, defining aquatic highways in a culture deeply connected to the sea. A more solemn possibility is that some of these cairns were memorial sites, marking resting places or ceremonial spaces for a community that saw the shallow coastal waters as part of their spiritual geography. Regardless of their primary function, the message of the Chiriquí cairns is profound. While we are not looking at a sunken city with streets and walls, we are witnessing something equally telling: massive human modification of a landscape. This complex represents a sustained, organized presence, a society that knew these tidal flats intimately and invested immense communal effort to shape them for their survival and identity. Their world was not the coastline we see on modern maps. It extended further out onto a plain that is now permanently underwater. These silent stone piles add a crucial new category of evidence to our search. They show that the fingerprints of lost Ice Age coastlines are not always found in towering pyramids or carved monuments. Sometimes they are found in the quiet, accumulated labor of countless individuals, each adding a stone to a pattern meant to last, a pattern that now rests beneath the Pacific swell, waiting to tell its part of the human story. The silent stone gardens of Panama show how communities shaped their world, but sometimes the sea preserves an entire city plan with textbook clarity. In the shallow, turquoise bay of Elander on the island of Crete, the water is so transparent it feels like looking through glass. Just beneath the surface, the grid of an ancient city lies perfectly preserved. This is Olous, a powerful Dorian city-state that flourished for centuries, minting its own coins and controlling trade in the eastern Mediterranean. Today, its story is written on the seafloor. As you drift over the site, the outlines of a complete urban community come into focus. Long sections of sturdy city walls, built from massive limestone blocks, trace the perimeter. Within them, the foundations of houses and public buildings define neighborhoods and open squares. Most striking are the paved streets, their stone surfaces still neatly aligned, forming the thoroughfares where citizens once walked. The cause of its sinking is not a mystery of deep time, but a documented hazard of the region. Like nearby Helike, Olous was almost certainly claimed by a catastrophic earthquake, its ground liquefying or subsiding before the bay waters rushed in to claim it, likely sometime in the early 1st millennium AD. While Olous is a classical era site, not an Ice Age ruin, its inclusion here is for a powerful, practical reason. It serves as an archaeological control site, a master key for understanding how the sea preserves and how we should look. The conditions here are ideal: shallow, calm, clear water with minimal sedimentation or strong currents. This allows researchers to map a sunken city with extraordinary precision, creating a complete blueprint of ancient urban planning. They can study exactly how walls collapse, how foundations settle, and how streets are buried by marine silt over time. This knowledge is invaluable when investigating far older, more ambiguous sites in murkier, deeper waters. When an archaeologist examines a strange linear formation off a distant coast, the lessons from Olous provide a baseline. Does the feature resemble the clear, purposeful construction of a known city wall, or does it align more with a natural rock fracture? By understanding the signature of a definitively human city beneath the waves, scientists are better equipped to separate the whispers of lost civilizations from the echoes of geology in the global ocean. Olous reminds us that sometimes the clearest windows into the deepest past are found in the most beautifully preserved and most recently lost of places. The story of Japan's sunken past does not end with the great terraces of Yonaguni. Far to the north, along the Saitobaru coast of Miyazaki Prefecture, the sea guards another set of secrets in far shallower, gentler waters. Here, divers and researchers have documented formations that challenge the simple division between land and sea. Large, flat platforms rise in distinct steps from the sandy bottom, their edges too straight, their surfaces too level to be easily dismissed as random geology. Nearby, what look like carved channels cut through the bedrock, and stone structures resemble altars or ceremonial basins, all resting silently just beneath the waves. Unlike the deep, dramatic isolation of Yonaguni, these structures feel closer, almost within reach, as if the ocean had only recently reclaimed a space that was once central to a community's life. This site, often called the Saitobaru Monument, is studied intently by local archaeologists who see in its stones a potential link to one of Japan's most foundational cultures, the Jōmon. The Jōmon period, stretching from about 14,000 to 300 years before the Common Era, represents a monumental chapter in human history. These were not nomadic wanderers, but some of the world's first settled hunter-gatherers, renowned for creating the oldest known pottery vessels, intricate clay figurines, and establishing complex ritual practices. They lived in harmony with a rich forest and coastal environment for millennia, leaving behind vast shell middens and stone circles on dry land. The submerged structures off Saitobaru invite a compelling question. What if the Jōmon world extended much further out, onto coastal shelves that are now underwater? The formations there could be the remains of terraced settlements built to take advantage of marine resources, or perhaps sacred ritual sites positioned at the boundary between forest and sea. Their submergence likely wasn't caused by global sea level rise alone, but by the immense tectonic forces that constantly shape the Japanese archipelago. This region is prone to seismic subsidence, where the land itself can sink during a major earthquake, allowing the ocean to rush in and permanently claim the coastline. This possibility adds a layer of poignant drama, a landscape that may have sunk in a single geological moment rather than through centuries of creeping water. The importance of Saitobaru lies in the pattern it suggests. It means Yonaguni, for all its grandeur and controversy, might not be a lonely anomaly in the Pacific. Instead, it could be one prominent point in a constellation of Jōmon sites that once dotted a now-drowned coastline. This expands our view from a single mysterious monument to an entire cultural interaction with a lost geography. It proposes that the Jōmon people, with their profound artistic and spiritual sophistication, may have built their world on a shore that has since slipped beneath the waves, leaving only these cryptic stone platforms as reminders of where the land once ended and their ceremonies began. Beneath the cold, grey waves of the North Sea lies the ghost of an entire continent. This is not a sunken city, but a drowned world, a place once so vast and fertile that it could have supported thousands of generations. Archaeologists call it Doggerland, a sprawling plain that connected the British Isles to mainland Europe during the last ice age. For the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who lived there, it was a paradise of forests, rivers, and rolling hills, teeming with game and rich in resources. Today, its entire landscape rests under tens of meters of dark, churning water, a silent testament to the sheer scale of what was lost. Modern seismic surveys have performed a kind of digital archaeology, using sound waves to map the seafloor and peel back the layers of silt. The images they create are hauntingly clear. They reveal the winding channels of ancient rivers like the Rhine and the Thames, which once carved valleys through this plain. They show the outlines of long-vanished lakes, marshes, and even great hills that would have been landmarks for the people who lived there. This is a topographic map of a vanished country, a detailed blueprint of a world we can no longer walk. The proof of who walked that world comes not from grand structures but from the mud itself. For over a century, fishing trawlers working the rough waters of the Dogger Bank have hauled up astonishing relics in their nets. Mixed with cod and sole are the bones of mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and giant deer, creatures that grazed on that fertile plain. More poignant are the human artifacts, flint tools, hand axes, and barbed points carved from antler, all lost or discarded by hunters millennia ago. Perhaps the most profound find is a fragment of a Neanderthal skull, weathered by time and water, a direct connection to an even deeper human past in this landscape. Each of these objects is a message in a bottle from a flooded world, telling us that Doggerland was not an empty wilderness, but a lived-in homeland. The story of its end is written in the rising sea. As the glaciers melted, the water advanced steadily, transforming forests into wetlands and then into shallow lagoons. The final chapter likely came around 8,000 years ago, when a massive submarine landslide off the coast of Norway, known as the Storegga Slide, triggered a devastating tsunami. A wall of water would have swept across the remaining low-lying plains, delivering the final blow to a landscape and a way of life already in retreat. Doggerland forces us to expand our understanding of what constitutes a lost civilization. It may not have had stone cities, but it supported complex human societies adapted to a rich environment that simply does not exist today. This submerged continent reminds us that for every potential Yonaguni or Cuban complex, there are countless undiscovered campfires, burial sites, and sacred places now resting on the bed of the North Sea, holding stories we have only just begun to fathom. The silent plains of Doggerland speak of a world lost to time, But in the Western Pacific, a city built upon the water itself tells a story of defiance against the sea. On the island of Pohnpei, the ruins of Nan Madol rise from a shallow lagoon, a maze of over 90 artificial islets constructed from colossal basalt logs. These megaliths, some weighing many tons, were stacked like firewood to create platforms for temples, tombs, and dwellings, all connected by a network of canals. It is a breathtaking sight, often called the Venice of the Pacific, a testament to the engineering ambition of the Sodalor dynasty that ruled here 1,000 years ago. Yet the true wonder of Nan Madol lies not just in what is above the water, but in what is beneath it. The entire complex is built directly atop a living coral reef. According to local legend, the builders did not quarry and haul these stones. They used magical incantations to make them fly through the air, placing them gently into position. This enchanting story hints at a deeper truth: the sheer improbability of constructing such a city in this specific, challenging location. Why go to such extraordinary effort to build on a reef? The answer may be written in the slowly shifting relationship between land and ocean. Researchers note that sections of the massive seawalls and some outlying structures now lie partially submerged, even at low tide. This suggests that since Nan Madol's construction, the foundation has been sinking. This subsidence could be due to the immense weight of the stone structures slowly pressing down on the soft coral and sediment beneath, or it could be linked to broader tectonic activity in this volatile region. Some archaeologists propose an even more intriguing possibility: that the Sodalor builders were not the first to use this site. They may have chosen this reef because it was already a place of significance, perhaps building upon the submerged or partially flooded remnants of an earlier settlement constructed when sea levels were slightly lower. Nan Madol stands as a powerful bridge in our journey. It is not an Ice Age ruin, but a magnificent medieval city actively engaged in a slow-motion dialogue with the water that surrounds it. It shows that the process of sinking is not confined to a single, ancient cataclysm, but is an ongoing geological reality. The city becomes a palimpsest, a manuscript where one layer of human achievement is slowly being reclaimed by the sea, just as earlier layers may have been reclaimed before it. This site reminds us that the ocean's claim is relentless, affecting the marvels of 1,000 years ago just as it reshaped the coastlines of 10,000 years ago, creating a continuous story of human adaptation and the enduring, fluid border of our world. Caesarea Maritima was a statement carved into the very edge of the sea. Commissioned by Herod the Great in the 1st century before the Common Era, this port was not merely a dock, it was a breathtaking feat of engineering ambition, a declaration that human will could conquer the Mediterranean's relentless waves. Its most revolutionary feature was invisible, a special type of concrete that could cure underwater. Roman engineers mixed volcanic ash with lime and rubble, creating a slurry they poured into immense wooden forms directly on the seafloor. This hydraulic concrete hardened into the colossal foundations of breakwaters, creating one of the largest artificial harbors of the ancient world, capable of sheltering hundreds of ships. The scale was staggering, with a main basin larger than the modern port of Athens, protected by a massive seawall and adorned with towering lighthouses, warehouses, and temples. For centuries, Caesarea thrived as a glittering gateway between Rome and its eastern provinces, a hub of commerce and power built directly upon the water's edge. Yet the sea is a patient force. The very innovations that birthed Caesarea could not protect it forever. A combination of relentless geological pressures sealed its fate. Major earthquakes common in this volatile region shook the foundations, cracking the mighty concrete blocks. Tsunamis, triggered by undersea tremors, battered the weakened structures with walls of water. And over time, the constant movement of sand and sediment, the natural silting process of the coast, began to choke the once deep channels, rendering the harbor shallower and less navigable. It was a slow, multi-faceted collapse, a testament to how even the grandest human works must eventually yield to the planet's persistent rhythms. Today, the ruins of Caesarea's harbor lie scattered just offshore, a jumble of concrete blocks and toppled columns resting on the sandy bottom, a popular site for divers to explore. While firmly a classical-era marvel and not an Ice Age mystery, the scientific study of this sunken port is absolutely critical to our larger search. Archaeologists and marine geologists have meticulously mapped how the breakwaters failed, how the concrete degraded, and how the sands buried the structures. This provides a master blueprint, a taphonomic guide, for how large-scale maritime infrastructure behaves when submerged over millennia. When researchers now scan other coastlines, looking for anomalous shapes that might be the harbors of a forgotten epoch, they use the lessons of Caesarea. They know what the footprint of a failed artificial breakwater looks like on sonar, how collapsed quays settle into the sediment, and how to distinguish the orderly chaos of a constructed port from the random scatter of a natural reef. Caesarea Maritima is more than a ruin, it is a reference manual. It gives us the language to read the seafloor, turning ambiguous shapes into potential sentences in the long, drowned story of human attempts to build where the land meets the deep. Deep beneath the jungles of the Yucatan, a different kind of water holds the past. The peninsula is riddled with cenotes, natural sinkholes where the limestone ceiling has collapsed, revealing crystal-clear groundwater below. To the ancient Maya, these were sacred portals to the underworld, places of both life-giving water and profound spiritual power where they conducted ceremonies and made offerings to the gods. Modern archaeology has confirmed this sacred status, retrieving countless artifacts, from intricate pottery to finely crafted jewelry from their depths. Yet the true secret of the cenotes is not what was dropped in, but what they became when the world was colder and drier. During the last ice age, global sea levels were over 100 meters lower. This meant the vast freshwater aquifer beneath the Yucatan was also much lower. The cenotes we see today were not water-filled pits, but dry, vertical entrances leading down into immense, air-filled cave systems. These underground labyrinths, stretching for miles, would have been oases in a drier landscape, providing shelter, stable temperatures, and most crucially, access to water collected in deep pools. They represent a radical shift in our search, from sunken coastlines to drowned inland caverns. For the first people to reach the Americas, the Paleo-Indians, these caves could have been vital refuges. The discovery of Naya, the oldest and most complete human skeleton ever found in the Americas, in the submerged Hoyo Negro cenote, proves this connection. Her resting place, deep within a pitch-black chamber now filled with water, shows these spaces were explored over 12,000 years ago. Her story, pieced together by researchers, speaks to the challenges and adaptability of these early pioneers. The cenotes are not just Maya sacred sites, they are time capsules that sealed themselves when the Ice Age ended. As the glaciers melted and sea levels rose, so did the water table in the Yucatan, slowly and irrevocably flooding these vast cave networks over thousands of years. This process preserved a pristine record, trapping sediments, animal bones, and human artifacts in a silent, watery vault safe from surface erosion. The search within them is a frontier of underwater archaeology, requiring technical cave diving in total darkness, feeling along ancient stalagmites for clues left by the very first people to navigate this continent. It reminds us that evidence of Ice Age humanity may not lie on the open seabed, but in the hidden, flooded caverns beneath our feet, where the boundary between a water source, a shelter, and a sacred space has been blurred for millennia. The dark, tannin-stained waters of Florida's Osceola River hide a library of stone and bone. Far from any ocean coastline, This slow-moving river winds through a landscape pockmarked with sinkholes where the limestone bedrock gives way to deep, clear springs. For decades, divers and archaeologists have been exploring these submerged riverbeds and sinkholes, not in search of grand architecture, but of far more ancient and intimate traces. What they have recovered is a time capsule from the very edge of human memory in North America. Among the scattered stones on the bottom lie perfectly crafted spear points, their sharp edges still waiting for a throw that never came. Nearby, mixed with the river silt, are the massive bones and teeth of mastodons, some bearing the unmistakable cut marks of stone tools, evidence of a successful hunt and a community's meal from an unimaginably distant past. One particularly astounding find is what appears to be the remnants of a wooden structure, perhaps a hunting blind or a simple platform, preserved for millennia in the oxygen-poor mud. Radiocarbon dating on these materials consistently points to a timeline over 14,000 years ago. This places humans here, in what is now Florida, during the late Pleistocene, coexisting with and hunting the Great Ice Age megafauna. The significance of the Oscilla River sites is profound and twofold. First, it provides some of the most concrete, uncontroversial evidence for a human presence in the Americas, at a time when much of the continent was still gripped by cold. This isn't a debated sonar shape or a controversial rock formation. It is a stone tool in hand, a clear cut on a bone. It grounds the entire search for lost Ice Age cultures in undeniable physical proof. Second, and perhaps more crucial for our journey, it demonstrates that the rising waters we must contend with are not solely those of the oceans. As the Ice Age ended and the climate warmed, not only did the seas rise, but the continental water tables also climbed. Aquifers filled, springs bubbled more vigorously, and low-lying river valleys and sinkholes that were once dry or shallow became deep, permanent water features. The Oscilla River sites were not coastal settlements drowned by the Atlantic. They were inland hunting grounds and campsites slowly flooded by the very groundwater that sustained life. This expands our map dramatically. It tells us that to find the footprints of our earliest ancestors, we must look beneath the surfaces of lakes, rivers, and springs across the continents. Anywhere freshwater has risen to reclaim the land where people once walked, butchered their prey, and shaped their tools for survival. 40 meters beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, on a drowned ridge between Sicily and Tunisia, a single stone tells a silent story. This is the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank, a submerged island that was once dry land, and resting upon its ancient surface is a colossal block of limestone. It measures an astonishing 15 meters long, roughly the length of a city bus, and weighs many tons. What makes this monolith more than just a random boulder is the clear, deliberate work of human hands. Carved along its length is a regular series of holes, 3 perfectly cylindrical borings that could only have been made with tools and intent. This is not a product of chance erosion. It is a piece of architecture, quarried, shaped, and prepared for a purpose we can only begin to guess. Discovered by marine geologists mapping the seafloor, this solitary sentinel rests where no natural stone of its kind should be, far from any cliff face or quarry zone, positioned deliberately on a now sunken bank. Its presence alone is a declaration, a proof of human ambition in a place the maps say should hold only sand and silence. The dating of this monolith adds profound weight to its mystery. Analysis of the sediments and the sea level history of the region place its creation at a time when this bank was an island, over 9,000 years ago. This was the Mesolithic era, a period often depicted as one of simple, nomadic hunter-gatherers. Yet here is evidence of a society not only settled enough to undertake a massive stone working project, but one with the maritime skill to move such a weight, likely by raft or a system of floats across open water. The Pantelleria Vecchia Bank was not an isolated rock in the distant past. It was a strategic point in a very different Mediterranean geography. During the last ice age, with sea levels much lower, this area formed a navigable pass, a kind of stepping stone between larger landmasses, a crucial waypoint for any culture moving between what are now Sicily and the North African coast. The monolith's purpose remains open to interpretation. It could have been a monumental marker, a beacon or territorial sign visible to sailors crossing this ancient strait. The holes might have held a massive timber upright, transforming it into a towering totem or a sighting device for celestial navigation. Alternatively, it could be a single piece of a larger, now scattered complex, perhaps part of a dock, a ceremonial platform, or even an early lighthouse. Its solitude is poignant, a single page torn from a much larger book. This single stone does more than hint at a lost maritime culture. It forces a re-evaluation of what was possible in the deep past of the Mediterranean. It suggests that long before the Phoenicians earned their fame as sailors, other peoples were mastering these waters, leaving their mark not on the shores we know, but on islands that have since vanished beneath the waves. The monolith stands as a stark, physical rebuttal to the idea that monumental stonework began with the pyramids or Stonehenge. It whispers of a forgotten chapter where the central Mediterranean was a bridge, not a barrier, and where the first great mariners raised stones to the sky on lands that only the fish remember. The solitary monolith of Pantelleria Vecchia speaks of a quiet, gradual drowning, but the Black Sea holds the memory of a cataclysm. This immense inland sea, once a much smaller freshwater lake, is central to one of modern geology's most debated theories. Proposed by marine scientists William Ryan and Walter Pittman, the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis suggests a transformative event around 7,600 years ago. As global sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age, the Mediterranean's waters eventually topped the natural earthen dam that was the Bosporus Strait. What followed was not a trickle but a titanic surge. Saltwater is believed to have crashed through with the force of 200 Niagara Falls, pouring into the lower basin of the freshwater lake below. This relentless influx could have raised the shoreline by as much as 15 centimeters per day, swallowing an area the size of Florida within a single year. For any communities living along that ancient, fertile lakeshore, this would not have been a slow retreat, but a terrifying, inescapable wall of water advancing across the plain, reshaping the entire geography of the region in a geological instant. This theory transforms the Black Sea from a passive body of water into the stage for a real-world disaster of biblical proportions, a plausible historical kernel for the universal flood myths that echo across ancient cultures. The search for physical proof of this event and the people it displaced led one of the world's most famous ocean explorers into its depths. Robert Ballard, renowned for locating the wreck of the Titanic, turned his sophisticated technology toward the Black Sea's anoxic, oxygen-free layers where organic material can be preserved for millennia. His expeditions made several critical discoveries. Sonar mapping revealed a clear, ancient shoreline nearly 100 meters below the current surface, a ghostly beach from a lost world. More telling were the samples retrieved from that depth. They contained the shells of freshwater mollusks, species that could only have lived in a lake, not the salty sea that exists today. Carbon dating of these shells confirmed their age, aligning perfectly with the timeline of the proposed deluge. This was strong evidence that a freshwater environment had indeed been rapidly overtaken by a saltwater invasion. The ultimate goal, however, was to find traces of the people who lived there. While Ballard's team has yet to discover a sunken village with intact buildings, they have found compelling hints of human presence. These include worked stone tools and fragments of ceramics resting on that drowned ancient shoreline, artifacts that had no business being at the bottom of the sea unless the land had sunk beneath them. The environment itself tells a story of sudden change, with a layer of fine sediment blanketing the old landscape, as if laid down by a massive, turbulent influx of water. The implications of this research reach far beyond geology. If a thriving, settled community was truly scattered by this cataclysmic flood, the survivors would have fled in all directions, carrying with them a traumatic and defining story of a world consumed by water. This event, preserved in oral tradition, could have seeded the great flood narratives found in Mesopotamian epics, in the biblical story of Noah, and in countless other cultural memories around the Mediterranean and Near East. The Black Sea Basin thus becomes a potential crucible for myth, a place where a real geological event was translated into a powerful, enduring legend about divine judgment, survival, and a fresh start for humanity. While the search for definitive structures continues, the preserved landscape itself stands as a monumental testament to a lost homeland, a silent, submerged plain that may hold the origin of one of humanity's oldest and most widespread stories. This journey now takes us to the edge of the world, to the cold, windswept coast of southern Chile. Here, the Pacific's ceaseless rhythm meets a shoreline steeped in deep time. On land, the Monte Verde archaeological site has already rewritten the story of the Americas, proving human presence here over 14,500 years ago, long before many traditional models allowed. But the story does not end at the modern beach. Recent underwater surveys just off this coast have mapped something equally compelling, a series of broad, flat stone terraces descending beneath the waves. These submerged platforms, along with scattered stone tool fragments recovered from the seabed, suggest the early people of Monte Verde did not simply live inland. They actively shaped and utilized the very edge of the continent, a coastal margin that has since been claimed by the rising Pacific. These are not the grand pyramids of a later age, but the practical, enduring work of a pioneering community adapting to a rich environment. The terraces could have served as stable foundations for shelters overlooking productive tidal zones, as processing areas for marine harvests, or even as ceremonial spaces aligned with the horizon. Their presence underwater is not a mystery of sinking, but a marker of drowning, a direct result of the same global sea level rise that has hidden so many other shores. This discovery profoundly extends the known world of these first Americans. It moves them from the forested riverbank at Monte Verde onto the dynamic interface of land and sea. It provides tangible, physical support for what scientists call the kelp highway theory. This idea proposes that the first people to populate the Americas did not rely solely on an inland ice-free corridor, which may have been barren and difficult. Instead, they may have skillfully navigated along the Pacific coast, using boats to travel southward. They would have followed a near-continuous belt of kelp forests, ecosystems teeming with fish, shellfish, sea mammals, and birds, offering a reliable and abundant food source along their journey. The coastline they traveled, however, is not the one we see on maps today. It was a landscape dozens of meters lower and dozens of kilometers further out, now entirely submerged. The underwater terraces of Monte Verde are like a single, preserved footprint on that lost highway. They are a quiet testament that the earliest chapters of the human story in the Americas were written not just in stone tools around a forest hearth, but also in the careful arrangement of stones where the forest met the sea, on a shore that now exists only in the memory of the ocean floor. The silent terraces of Monte Verde speak of a lost coastline, but in the warm, shallow waters of the Gulf of Thailand, a more intimate mystery rests on the sandy bottom. Scattered across the seabed are dozens of large, carved stone jars. These are not random boulders, but unmistakably crafted vessels, some standing over a meter tall, with their distinctive cylindrical shapes and rounded lips looking eerily familiar. They are the close cousins of the famous Plain of Jars in Laos, a vast inland plateau where thousands of similar megalithic urns have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Yet here they are, submerged, a silent fleet of stone sentinels guarding a secret beneath the waves. Their presence on the ocean floor is the first and greatest clue to their story. These heavy jars, hewn from solid rock, were not dropped from a boat or lost at sea. They were placed with intention on dry land, in a location that has since been swallowed by the rising waters of the South China Sea. They mark a cultural landscape that is now entirely aquatic, a prehistoric cemetery or ceremonial ground that slipped beneath the surface as the immense continental shelf of Sunderland was flooded after the last ice age. The purpose of these jars, both on land and underwater, remains a subject of gentle speculation among researchers. The leading theory, supported by findings at the Laotian sites, is that they were used for mortuary practices. They may have served as vessels for the dignified resting of individuals, holding cremated remains or acting as symbolic tombs. Other possibilities include their use for storage of goods or fermenting beverages for communal rituals. Whatever their specific function, their sheer number and the effort required to carve and position them speaks of a shared cultural tradition, a common belief system that guided how a community honored their ancestors or marked their territory. Finding them underwater transforms them from archaeological curiosities into profound geographical markers. They are proof of a culture that practiced its traditions on a coastal plain or river valley that is now 40 meters below the surface, a physical connection to a people whose world is literally mapped by the depth of the water above their artifacts. This discovery adds a crucial and deeply human dimension to the inventory of submerged evidence. We have seen terraces, walls, and cairns, but these jars are different. They are not tools for survival or foundations for buildings. They are vessels of meaning. They represent the spiritual and ceremonial life of a society, their beliefs about life, loss, and what lies beyond. Their dispersal across the drowned shelf of Sunderland suggests this was not an isolated group, but part of a wider cultural network that understood this vast, fertile plain as their home. The flooding did not just erase hunting grounds or villages, it inundated sacred spaces and memorial sites, places where the living connected with those who came before. The submerged jars of Thailand remind us that the lost landscapes of the Ice Age were not blank slates, but worlds rich with ritual, memory, and the quiet, enduring human desire to leave a mark that says, "We were here and this place mattered to us." The stone jars of Thailand rest in salt water, but the same principle of preservation holds true in the freshwater lochs of the Scottish Highlands. Here, beneath the dark, peat-stained waters of places like Loch Tay, lies a different kind of submerged landscape, one built not by a forgotten civilization, but by the resourceful Iron Age communities we know from history. These are the Crannogs, artificial islands constructed from layers of timber, stone, and earth, and the mysterious cairn fields that surround them. Originally built in the shallow margins of the lochs as defensive homesteads and fishing bases, these structures have slowly sunk deeper over the centuries, not because of rising seas, but due to local environmental shifts like changes in the water table or the gradual settling of their foundations into the soft lake bed. This quiet subsidence has performed an extraordinary act of conservation. The cold, low-oxygen water has created a perfect time capsule, preserving organic materials that would have vanished on dry land in mere decades. Archaeologists diving on these sites have recovered structural timbers still bearing the clean axe marks of their builders, intricate wooden tools, even the delicate remains of food like butter and grains left in containers. The level of detail is breathtaking, offering a direct, tangible connection to daily life 2,000 years ago. While these Scottish sites are far younger than the Ice Age ruins we have explored, they serve an invaluable purpose as a living laboratory. They demonstrate with crystal clarity the principle of preservation by inundation. Waterlogging halts decay, sealing a moment in time. The Cranogs and their cairnfields show us exactly how human-built features transition from dry land to underwater realms through natural environmental change, not sudden catastrophe. This gives researchers a master key for identifying and interpreting smaller, more subtle sites in both freshwater lakes and marine environments worldwide. When an archaeologist finds a pile of stones on a lake bed, the well-studied cairnfields of Loch Tay provide a reference. Was it a natural glacial deposit, or does its arrangement mirror the purposeful, ceremonial cairns built by known Iron Age people? The Scottish lochs offer a controlled comparison, a bridge between the known historical record and the profound unknowns of deeper prehistory. They teach us to read the signatures of human activity on submerged landscapes, training our eyes to see the intentional pattern within the silent, scattered stones of a much older world. The silent jaws of Thailand and the preserved timbers of Scotland remind us that water can both erase and protect. Now, from the mists of legend into the clear Mediterranean light, we find a city that embodies both truths in breathtaking scale. For centuries, the port of Thonis-Heracleion existed only in fragments of ancient texts, a place mentioned by Herodotus as the Grand Gateway where Greek merchants first entered Egypt. Historians debated whether it was a real city or a confused memory, its name slowly fading into myth. Then, in the year 2000, French underwater archaeologist Frank Godiot, working from a hunch and old maps, began to scan the murky waters of Aboukir Bay near the Nile Delta. His team's sonar did not return vague shapes, but the unmistakable outlines of a colossal urban landscape resting on the seafloor. They had found the lost city not in ruins but in a state of suspended animation beneath the silt. The scale of what emerged from the bay's embrace was staggering. Divers glided past 16-foot-tall statues of a pharaoh and a queen, carved from red granite, their serene faces gazing upward through the green water as if awaiting resurrection. They discovered the remains of massive temples dedicated to the gods Ammon and Khonsu, their stone blocks still inscribed with hieroglyphs. Most haunting of all were the dozens of ancient shipwrecks, their wooden hulls preserved in the oxygen-poor clay, still loaded with coins, jewelry, and ceremonial weights, frozen in the moment of their sinking. This was not a village but a sprawling, wealthy metropolis, the customs house and primary harbor for all Mediterranean trade with Egypt for centuries. Its rediscovery was like finding a complete chapter of history thought to be fiction, now written in stone and wood on the ocean floor. The city's fate is a textbook lesson in environmental vulnerability. Thonis-Heracleion was built on the unstable, silty ground of the Nile Delta. Over time, a combination of rising sea levels, subsidence from the immense weight of its own buildings, and likely a trigger event like a major earthquake, caused the water-saturated soil to liquefy. The very ground the city stood on turned to a fluid, swallowing temples, toppling statues, and dragging an entire world into the bay within a relatively short period, probably around the 8th century AD. While Thonis-Heracleion is a post-classical marvel and not an Ice Age ruin, its instructional value is immense. It shows in vivid, recovered detail the sheer volume of a civilization's material culture, the art, the commerce, the sacred objects that can vanish beneath the waves and lie perfectly preserved for a millennium. It fuels a powerful line of thought for our entire journey. If a city of this magnitude, from a well-documented historical period, could be lost and then found so completely, what unimaginable treasures from vastly older epochs might still be hidden in the deeper, older sediment layers of the world's continental shelves? This Egyptian harbor does not answer that question, but it makes the question feel thrillingly, tangibly possible. The Amazon River holds its breath for half the year, and when it exhales, it reveals a gallery of ghosts. As the water level drops dramatically during the dry season, vast stretches of riverbed are exposed, and with them emerge stones covered in intricate, ancient carvings. These are not random scratches. They depict elaborate geometric spirals, human figures with distinct headdresses, and a menagerie of the rainforest's inhabitants: turtles, jaguars, and serpents, all etched into the rock with clear purpose and skill. For the few months they are visible, these petroglyphs are a stunning sight, a direct line of communication from a deep past. Then the rains return, the river swells, and the art is submerged once more, hidden beneath the brown water for another season. This cyclical concealment is the key to their story. These carvings were not made to be temporary. Their artists did not wade into a flowing river to create them. They were almost certainly carved when these rock faces were permanently dry, when the river's course or its overall level was significantly different than it is today. The submergence of these sacred art sites points to profound environmental change within the continent's interior, a shift in the very heartbeat of the Amazonian hydrological system over thousands of years. This connects to a revolutionary rethinking of the Amazon itself. For generations, the dominant view painted the rainforest as a pristine wilderness, only sparsely populated by small, nomadic tribes. But a growing body of archaeological evidence, from the discovery of vast terra preta soils to remnants of complex earthworks and garden cities, suggests a different history. It hints at the possibility of sizable, sophisticated pre-Columbian societies that actively shaped and managed the forest, creating a cultivated landscape that supported large populations. The petroglyphs, appearing like memories on the drying stones, could be the cultural signature of such a people, marking territorial boundaries, recording mythic histories, or denoting ritual spaces along what were once stable riverbanks. Their periodic drowning is a powerful parallel to our global story. While the cause here is not melting ice sheets raising ocean levels, it is another form of environmental transformation, shifts in rainfall patterns, river course avulsion, or the gradual sinking of land. The principle remains hauntingly consistent. Whether by the saltwater of a rising sea or the freshwater of a changing river, the evidence of past human achievement is often found just below the waterline, waiting for the moment to resurface and challenge our understanding of where and how civilization first took root. The coral reefs of northwestern Australia hold more than just the vibrant colors of the living sea. On the submerged continental shelf, in areas like the remote Rowley Shoals, sonar images and diver reports have revealed something older and more cryptic. Beneath the modern coral gardens lie strange, massive mounds and long, linear ridges, their forms smoothed and hidden by centuries of marine growth. From a purely geological perspective, they could be the remnants of ancient, fossilized reef structures, the skeletal backbone of a much older seascape. Yet their regular shapes and alignments have prompted a quieter, more speculative question from a handful of researchers. Could some of these formations be something else entirely? The coral-encrusted ruins of stonework from a time when this shelf was dry land. The environment here is challenging, with strong currents and vast, unexplored areas, making definitive study difficult. This ambiguity places the mermaid reef formations on the very frontier of underwater exploration, a mystery waiting in the turquoise haze of the Indian Ocean. To understand why this question is even asked, we must listen to a different kind of map, one drawn not by sonar but by story. Indigenous Australian cultures preserve profound oral traditions about the shaping of the world during the Dreamtime. Among these are clear and consistent accounts of lost coastlines and lands that now lie beneath the sea. Stories from groups across the north describe a time when the islands were part of the mainland, when you could walk to places now separated by open water. These are not vague myths, but detailed narratives that speak of specific geographic changes, of hunting grounds and ceremonial sites that were swallowed by the rising ocean. This traditional knowledge aligns precisely with the geological reality of the Sahel Shelf. During the last ice age, lower sea levels exposed this vast plain, connecting Australia to New Guinea and Tasmania in a single continent known as Sahul. This land bridge was not a barren span, but likely a rich mosaic of savannas, rivers, and forests that would have supported human life for tens of thousands of years. As the ice melted, the waters rose slowly and steadily, flooding this plain over millennia, forcing populations to retreat and forever altering their world. The potential significance of sites like the Mermaid Reef Mounds lies in this convergence. They sit on that drowned landscape, the Sahul Shelf. If future research, combining meticulous marine archaeology with the guidance of indigenous traditional knowledge, were to find unambiguous evidence of human modification there, it would illuminate a lost chapter of human history in Australia. It would reveal how the first peoples navigated and utilized that now vanished continent, perhaps constructing stone arrangements, fish traps, or shelters on a coastline that has been underwater for over 7,000 years. For now, the mounds remain enigmas, their truth locked beneath layers of coral and time. They stand as a powerful symbol of the partnership needed to uncover the deepest past, where the oldest stories on Earth might one day guide us to the oldest stones beneath the sea. High in the alpine air, where mountain peaks touch the clouds, the lakes hold a different kind of memory. The crystal-clear waters of Lake Geneva and Lake Constance appear perfectly still, yet beneath their glassy surfaces lies a hidden world of ancient homes. These are not the ruins of stone cities, but the delicate, waterlogged footprints of prehistoric villages built on stilts, known as pile dwellings. Constructed over 5,000 years ago during the Neolithic and Bronze Age, these settlements were masterpieces of adaptation, where communities built their wooden houses directly over the water's edge, connected to the shore by narrow walkways. They fished from their doorsteps, stored food in the cool lake below their floors, and found safety from predators and rival groups on their aquatic platforms. Today, the silent posts of those villages still stand upright, embedded in the lakebed, forming ghostly forests that mark where vibrant communities once thrived. These sites are so exceptionally preserved and culturally significant that they are collectively protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a testament to their value as archives of daily life in deep time. What makes these alpine villages so extraordinary is not their grand scale, but their breathtaking intimacy. The cold, oxygen-poor water and layers of fine sediment have acted as a perfect time capsule, preserving materials that vanish in almost any other environment. Archaeologists carefully excavating these submerged sites have recovered objects that feel startlingly personal. They have found finely woven baskets, fragments of linen clothing, and even leftover meals, berry seeds, grains, and fish bones that tell us exactly what a family ate on a day thousands of years in the past. Wooden tools with handles smoothed by palms, delicate jewelry, and ceramic pots still sitting where they were left create a portrait of domestic life so complete it bridges the immense gap of millennia. This level of preservation transforms these piles from mere archaeological sites into tangible connections, allowing us to see the craftsmanship, the diet, and the daily rhythms of our distant ancestors with stunning clarity. The story of their submergence is one of gentle, environmental change. These villages were not swallowed by a cataclysm. They were built at a specific lake level, but over the centuries and millennia that followed, natural shifts in climate and hydrology caused the water in these alpine basins to slowly, inexorably rise. The lakes climbed centimeter by centimeter, eventually flooding the wooden floors and submerging the support posts. This gradual process is what sealed and protected the artifacts, burying them in mud and shielding them from decay. This offers a perfect, well-studied analogy for the coastal settlements we have explored across the globe. Just as the Swiss lakes rose, so did the world's oceans. The principle is identical. A community builds its life at the water's edge, adapting brilliantly to that environment. Then, over generations, the waterline changes, reclaiming the land and encasing the evidence of that life in a protective, aqueous vault. The Swiss pile dwellings demonstrate that the phenomenon of underwater preservation is not limited to saltwater coasts or tropical seas. It is a global truth applying to mountain lakes, slow rivers, and inland seas alike, wherever water has risen to claim human spaces. These silent villages in the Alps provide a crucial, grounded reference point. They are a controlled, thoroughly understood example of how water preserves culture. When we look at the far older, more ambiguous shapes on continental shelves or in distant ocean trenches, we can use the lessons from Lake Geneva. We know what a preserved wooden post looks like after 5,000 years underwater. We understand how artifacts settle and how structures collapse in a gentle, silting environment. This knowledge helps archaeologists distinguish between a natural formation and the potential remains of a community that lived, worked, and raised families on a shoreline that no longer exists. Pile dwellings remind us that the search for lost history is not always about finding colossal monuments. Sometimes, the most profound stories are told by a single, preserved wooden bowl, resting on a lakebed, waiting for its story to surface once more. The waters of the Persian Gulf conceal one of the most logical, yet most elusive chapters in the human story. Today, this body of water is a shallow, salty sea, but during the peak of the last ice age, it was something entirely different. With sea levels over 100 meters lower, the basin was not underwater at all. It was a vast, fertile river valley, a green and habitable extension of the Tigris-Euphrates system, crisscrossed by freshwater channels and dotted with oases. This was not a marginal environment, but a potential paradise, a refugia where human populations could have thrived during the harsh climatic swings of the glacial period. For archaeologists tracing the pathways of early human migration out of Africa, this drowned landscape represents a tantalizing blank spot on the map, a missing corridor of immense importance. The models are compelling. Climate reconstructions suggest it offered a viable route, while genetic and archaeological evidence from surrounding regions points to its likely use. Yet the proof itself lies silent, under up to 130 meters of modern seawater. This makes the Persian Gulf Basin a unique entry on our list, not as a confirmed ruin, but as a monumental prediction. It is a case built on powerful deduction rather than direct discovery. Given what we know of human behavior, if groups were moving through or settling in this lush valley for thousands of years, they would have left traces. We should logically expect to find the scattered remnants of lithic workshops, where early people knapped stone into tools, their characteristic flakes and discarded cores now resting on a drowned riverbank. We might discover the faint outlines of seasonal campsites, places where families gathered around hearths that have long since cooled. It is even plausible that more substantial, semi-permanent settlements existed near reliable water sources, their foundations waiting beneath the silt. The inclusion of this site shifts our perspective from what has been found to what almost certainly remains to be found. It represents the vast, unexplored potential of underwater prehistory. The technical challenge of systematically surveying such a deep, large area is immense, but the reward would be transformative. Confirming human presence in the Ice Age Persian Gulf would fill a critical gap in our narrative, illuminating how our ancestors navigated and inhabited a world that has literally been washed away. It turns the Gulf from a barrier into a bridge, a lost fertile crescent that may have nurtured the very populations who would later give rise to the first cities of Mesopotamia on its sunken shores. This predictive search reminds us that the story of drowned civilizations is not finished. It is an ongoing investigation, with its most promising chapters still waiting in the dark on the seafloors we have only just begun to read. The desert plains of Nazca hold one of archaeology's most enduring aerial mysteries. For centuries, the only eyes that saw the full scale of its geoglyphs, the colossal spider, the hummingbird, the astronaut, were those of the gods, or so it seemed, until the airplane gave us a view from the sky. These immense lines and figures, etched into the arid Peruvian pampa, are a testament to a culture that thought in grand scale, transforming the very skin of the earth into a canvas for ritual, astronomy, or pilgrimage. But what if the canvas was larger than we know? This brings us to our 30th and final speculative site, a question rather than a discovery. Could the Nazca, who so masterfully marked their high desert, have also left their signature on landscapes that are now beneath the Pacific Ocean? The coastline of Peru is a dramatic place where the Andes Mountains plunge steeply into a deep ocean trench. Yet geological studies indicate that during the peak of the last ice age, the sea level here was over 100 meters lower. This exposed a wide coastal plain, a flat, terraced shelf extending far westward from the foot of the mountains, a perfect potential canvas for a culture obsessed with large-scale land art. That plain now lies submerged, a lost territory between the desert we know and the deep sea. While no underwater Nazca lines have been confirmed, the idea is fueled by discoveries on land. In recent years, archaeologists using drones have uncovered dozens of previously unknown geoglyphs in adjacent valleys near Nazca. These new finds reveal that the practice was far more extensive than the famous Central Plateau, spreading across a much wider region. If the culture's impulse to create these ground drawings was this pervasive, it logically follows that they would have utilized any available suitable surface, including those vast, flat coastal terraces that were dry and accessible for thousands of years before the ocean reclaimed them. The theory remains purely hypothetical, a ghost image on a sonar screen of the mind, yet its power lies in the challenge it presents to our imagination. We have searched for sunken cities, temples, and monuments, but this asks us to consider a different kind of cultural fingerprint, not architecture, but art on a geographical scale. It suggests that the most ephemeral yet enduring traces of a lost world might not be walls that have fallen, but lines that were drawn. These would be the ultimate expressions of a people in dialogue with their environment, markings meant to be seen from an elevated perspective, perhaps by ancestors looking down from the sacred mountains toward a shore that no longer exists. The technology to systematically search for such features on the submerged continental shelf through ultra-high-resolution sonar and autonomous underwater vehicles is only now coming of age. The quest would be monumental, scanning hundreds of square miles of seabed for patterns that defy natural explanation. But if such a discovery were ever made, it would forge a profound and poetic link. It would connect the most iconic aerial art in the world to the greatest global event in human prehistory, the rising seas. It would mean the Nazca were not just drawing for the sky, but also for a shoreline that slowly vanished, leaving their largest possible work to be curated by the silent, dark museum of the deep. This speculative conclusion ties our journey together not with a final answer, but with an expanding horizon. From the first terraces of Yonaguni to the last imagined lines off Nazca, the message is consistent. The map of our past is incomplete, and its missing pieces lie under the gentle, persistent weight of water. Each site, whether confirmed or contested, is a whisper from a time when continents were shaped differently, and humanity's story was written on a stage that has since been flooded. These 30 ruins are not just relics, they are invitations to look deeper, to question longer, and to remember that history is not only buried beneath the soil, but also waiting beneath the swell, where the oceans guard the secrets of a world we are only beginning to dream of. Standing back from this global map of submerged stones, a remarkable pattern emerges from the depths. From the terraces of Japan to the monolith off Sicily, a recurring signature appears, the human hand shaping colossal stone. This was not an isolated cultural fluke, but a repeated technological and spiritual response to the world, an archaic language written in granite and limestone across drowned coastlines. These builders, separated by vast oceans, each arrived at a similar conclusion, that to make a mark that endured, to anchor their community or their beliefs, they must work with the most permanent material their environment offered. This shared impulse to build big, to shape the very bones of the earth, suggests a level of social organization and shared purpose that our textbooks often reserve for much later periods. It hints at a common thread of human ingenuity woven through cultures that may never have known of each other's existence, all responding to the challenges and opportunities of a world with a different shoreline. The geography of these ruins tells its own silent story. If you plot them on a map, they cluster not in the open ocean, but along the edges of what we now call continental shelves, those gently sloping plains that were once dry land. They gather near the submerged mouths of ancient rivers, like the Indus feeding the Gulf of Combat or the lost rivers of Doggerland. This is not a coincidence, it is a blueprint of human necessity. Rivers were the highways and lifeblood of the ancient world, providing fresh water, fertile soil, and a means of transport. Their mouths, where freshwater met the sea, created incredibly rich ecosystems, teeming with fish and shellfish, making them ideal locations for sustained settlement. The fact that so many enigmatic structures are found precisely in these logically prime locations strengthens the case that we are looking at the deliberate choices of communities, not random acts of geology. They built where life was most abundant, on landscapes that are now the least accessible to us. The ways in which these places were lost are as varied as the cultures that built them, yet they fall into two profound categories. The first is the slow, inexorable creep of the rising ocean, a patient force that gave generations time to adapt, to mourn, and to eventually retreat, as seen at Atlit and across the drowned plains of Sunderland. The second is the sudden, violent cataclysm, the earthquake that liquefies the ground, the tsunami that crashes across a coastal plain, or the landslide that triggers a deluge, as the stories of Helike and the Black Sea Basin so powerfully illustrate. Our planet's history is punctuated by both these rhythms, the gradual change and the abrupt disaster, and the ruins beneath the waves bear witness to both. This duality helps explain why evidence is so fragmented, some sites preserved almost intact by gentle silting, others shattered and scattered by unimaginable force. When we view any one of these 30 sites in isolation, doubts can rightly linger. The natural world is capable of creating breathtakingly artificial-looking forms. But when we step back and view the collective picture, a different kind of logic takes hold. It becomes statistically and geographically improbable for so many anomalous, human-appearing structures to be concentrated exclusively on landscapes we know were habitable and exposed during the last ice age. The argument shifts from proving a single sunken city to recognizing a glaring gap in the archaeological record. We have meticulously studied the ancient river valleys and caves, but we have barely begun to explore the continental shelves, which represent a comparable, if not larger, area of prime prehistoric real estate. The consistent, global pattern of submerged anomalies suggests that significant chapters of the human story, entire sagas of innovation, migration, and community, are missing from our narrative. They rest on the now inaccessible ocean floor, a library of stone and sediment where the pages of our deepest past await a future brave enough to turn them. The story told by these 30 sites is not one of a single lost empire, but a global mosaic of forgotten chapters. Each submerged stone, from the sunken village to the deep-sea monolith, forms part of a haunting tapestry that reveals human ambition, profound adaptation, and ultimately, a shared experience of loss, all woven into the very fabric of our planet's changing climate. We have walked the ghost streets of Pavlopetri and felt the quiet dignity of Atlit. We have stared at the Sonar ghosts off Cuba and contemplated the rhythmic breath of Lannic. Together, they whisper of a time when shorelines were drawn in different ink, when continents wore different faces, and when lands now silent under crushing pressure were alive with the sounds of community, ceremony, and daily struggle. The key takeaway from this journey is not a proven map of Atlantis waiting to be unfurled. It is something more valuable, a compelling argument for humility and for a spirit of continued exploration. Our collective history is likely older, more complex, and far more maritime than our traditional narratives allow. For too long, we have searched for the origins of civilization solely on the dry land that remains, ignoring the vast, drowned plains that may have been its true cradle. These underwater ruins challenge us to expand our search, to listen to the stories preserved in both legend and geology, and to accept that the human story is a palimpsest, with its earliest writings often lying beneath the most recent layer. There is a poignant urgency to this understanding that echoes into our present. As our own world grapples with rising seas, these submerged sentinels from the past serve as a powerful, silent reminder of civilization's enduring fragility in the face of planetary change. They are monuments not just to what was, but to the constant dialogue between humanity and an evolving Earth. Let this exploration be a call to curiosity. We are standing at the frontier of a new kind of history, one revealed by sonar and retrieved by divers. It invites each of us to look beneath the waves with new eyes, to question established narratives with an open mind, and to support the meticulous scientific quest to piece together our true, deep origins. The ocean floor is the world's largest museum, and we have only just begun to read its labels. Which of these ruins intrigues you the most? Do the practical terraces of Monte Verde speak to you, or does the profound mystery of the Cuban deep sea formations capture your imagination? Share your thoughts below. For more deep dives into the shadows of history, subscribe and join the search. And remember, the past is not always buried in dust. Sometimes it sleeps beneath the sea, waiting for the light of discovery to find it once more.